Um, So today is the first day of our 2024 A-level biology revision class, right? Your exam is scheduled to November, right? Most probably like you can sit for the exam in November. So roughly we have 9 months to get prepared for this exam, and you have 10 units, right? 10 units in biology. Okay, so my target is within first 4 weeks. That means in the second, third, and fourth weeks of February, and in the first week of March, I'm going to complete second unit, right? Whole second unit with all the theories and questions. Okay, so today my target is to complete elemental composition of living matter, water, carbohydrate, proteins, and lipids, right? If you, for the class work, right, you should maintain 2 books. One book for MCQ points and the other one for essays. Okay, right, let's start. So in the second chapter, first we have to learn about elements. Okay, if you have any questions, please send your questions through the chat. First, in this lesson, chemical and cellular basis of life, first we have to learn about elemental composition of living matter, elements, right? So in the resource book, it is given that there are 92 elements that naturally occur in earth crust. Elements කීයක් තියෙනවලු? 92ක් තියෙනවලු earth crust එකේ. Out of that, 20 to 25%, right? Essential, අනිවාර්ය මොනි for what? To continue healthy life and for the reproduction. Okay, when you go to unit 5 and unit 4 it is based on plants, and unit 5 is about the human body, right? You can learn about the uses of these elements. Essential for what? To continue healthy life and for the reproduction, right? එතකොට humans ලගේ දැන් 92න් 20 to 25% තමයි essential. කීයක් ඕනද 92න්? දැන් අතන percentage එකක් විදිහට තමයි අපි දැනගත්තේ point එක. Humans, they need roughly 25 elements, right? Out of that 92 elements that naturally occur on the earth crust, 25 elements are essential for humans to continue healthy life and for their reproduction. And plants need 17 elements. Okay? Right. Then out of those elements, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Unknown elements 4, right? They make up 96% of living matter. හරිද? දැන් අපි මිනිස්සෙක් ගත්තොත් එයාගේ body එකේ 96% තියෙන මොනවද elements? Carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. එතකොට අර ඉතිරි 4%. හරිද? ඒකේ තියෙනවා calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, right? And trace elements. හරිද? Trace elements means copper, chromium, fluorine, iodine, ferrous, molybdenum, manganese, selenium, ඔය විදිහේ 14ක්. Right? හරිද? This is the elemental composition of living matter. Then මෙතන අපිට points there are a lot of points we have to remember. First thing, there are 92 elements naturally occur on earth crust. Out of that, 20 to 25% of elements are essential to continue healthy life and reproduction. So humans need 25 and plants need 17. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen makes 96% of living matter, right? The other 4%, right? It is completed by macro elements and trace elements. Trace elements means the elements that required in very small amounts, right? What are the macro elements? Calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, magnesium. ඒ කියන 7. හරිද? trace elements විදිහට අපිට රොසෝස් බුක් එකේ දීලා තියෙනවා elements 14ක්. boron, cobalt, copper, chromium, fluorine, iodine, ferrous, molybdenum, manganese, selenium, silicon, tin, vanadium, zinc. ඔය 14 trace element. ඒ ටිකයි අර 7යි ඒ ටික එකතු කළා මොකද වෙන්නේ? දැන් අපි කෙලිම human කෙනෙක් ගත්තොත් 96.3% covered by this carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. The remaining 3.7% is covered by those 7 calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, magnesium and the other 14 trace elements. Okay? ඒක හරිද? ඉස්සෙල්ලාම තියෙන්නේ ඒ ටික අපිට. Any doubts? Right. Then අපි ඔය MCQ points ටික we can write those MCQ points on that book. මං කිව්වා පොතක් ඕනි කියලා. Right? Write down the topic elemental composition of living matter and first point is there are above 92 elements naturally occur on earth crust. You can highlight the number 92, right? Over MCQ වල එන්න පුළුවන්. 92. Okay? I need all of you to write those MCQ points, right? Write down those MCQ points. Next point, 20 to 25% elements are essential to continue healthy life and for the reproduction. Highlight the word to continue healthy life and reproduction. Next one, 25 elements essential for humans, 17 elements essential for plants. Next point, 96% of living matter is composed of oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Okay? Next point. Remaining 4% is covered by calcium, phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur. That is overall. When we come to humans, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen accounts for 96.3. නැත්තම් අර කලින් එකේ මම කිව්වේ 96% කියලා ගත්තේ overall ඔක්කොම organisms ලා including plants. Right? Humans විතරක් consider කරොත් carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen accounts 96.3% of body mass. Right? That is the next point. Then, the remaining 3.7% is covered by macro elements such as calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, magnesium, and trace elements. Trace element means the elements which are required in very small amounts. Under the trace elements, you can write down, there are 14. හරිද? 14ක් තියෙනවා. Boron, cobalt, copper, chromium, fluorine, iodine, ferrous, molybdenum, manganese, selenium, silicon, tin, vanadium, and zinc. Okay, right. Next topic. Now we have to learn about water. Right? වතුර ගැන ඉගෙන ගන්න තියෙන්නේ. So here we have to learn the physical and chemical properties of water. Now let's talk about the chemical properties, right? What is the chemical formula? You have learned about that in chemistry, right? When you were in smaller grades. H2O, right? Water again, H2O molecule, right? This is the chemical structure of water molecule. Two hydrogen atoms are bonded to one oxygen atom. This is an angular molecule, right? Between these two OH bonds, there is an angle and it is 104.5 degrees. 104.5. There are some MCQs, right? There was a one MCQ in a school paper, right? In that one, it was the first MCQ in that paper. Paper ke පළවෙනි එකේ අහලා තිබ්බේ what is the angle in water molecule, right? එතකොට ඒකේ දීලා තිබ්බ 105.4 104.5. ගොඩක් අය එතන choose කරේ මොකද්ද? 105.4. එතකොට මෙතන මතක තියාගන්න the angle should be 104.5 degrees. Okay. Then so this is an angular molecule. What are the elements? Oxygen and hydrogen. Two hydrogen atoms are bonded to one oxygen atom. Now, according to the Pauling scale, what is the electronegativity of oxygen? It is here. ඉගෙන ගන්නවා chemistry වල. Send your answers through the chat, right? 3.5. Hydrogen 2.1. Right? 2.1. Okay. So as a result of this electronegativity difference, now electronegativity of oxygen is higher than hydrogen, right? It is obvious. You can see that. According to what you have learned in chemistry, right? Due to this electronegativity difference, what happened? You know, there are electrons on this hydrogen bond. මේ oxygen and hydrogen atom අතර මොකද්ද bond එකක් තියෙනවා. මේක අතර තියෙන මොනවද? Electrons. Due to this electronegativity difference, the electrons of this bond push towards the oxygen atom. නේද? Electrons ටික මොකද වෙන්නේ? Oxygen පැත්තට push වෙනවා. එයා ඇදගෙන ඉන්නේ. So electron cloud or electronegativity is high in oxygen. Therefore, it gets a partially negative charge. Right? It's a relative charge. Relative to hydrogen, it is negatively charged because all the electrons of the bond are pushed or attracted towards this oxygen atom. And hydrogen, two hydrogen atoms have partially positive charge. Delta positive. Delta means small. හරිද? Partial oxygen atom bears partially negative charge and the hydrogen atom bears partially positive charge. So because of this negative and positive charges, this water molecule become what? It becomes polar. Ne? ද්‍රවීය වෙනවා. Polar molecule එක. It's polar. Now if we take I2 ගත්තොත්, I2 means two iodine bonds, iodine atoms bonded by a covalent bond. Is this polar? No, this is non-polar because electronegativity difference is 0. But high water molecule, it is polar, right? Due to the electronegativity differences between this oxygen and hydrogen atom. හරිද? ඒක තේරුණාද? Next one, ඊළඟට then due to this polarity, right? All the properties there are before that. You know what is the bond between this oxygen and hydrogen? It is called hydrogen bond. දැන් මේ water molecule එක මෙතන ගත්තොත් hydrogen bonds දෙකක් තියෙනවා. Due to this negative charge on the oxygen atom, right, it can form another bond with the positively charged atom. Now, positively charged එකෙක් bond එකක් හදාගන්න පුළුවන්. හිතන්න මෙයා වටේ මෙහෙම තනි water molecule එකක් තියෙන්නේ නැහැනේ. අපි වතුර වීදුරුවක්, if you take a glass of water, there is not only one water molecule, there are lots, right? A large number of water molecules and they are attracted to each other. හරිද? හිතන්න දැන් මෙතන water molecule එක තියෙනවා and this oxygen it is negatively charged. හරිද? negative charge නම් එයා හැමතිස්සෙම කාටද attract වෙන්නේ? තව positive charge කෙනෙක්ට. දැන් එයා බැලුවාම එයා වටේ ඕන තරම් ඉන්නවා කට්ටිය. එහෙනම් තව ළඟම ඉන්න adjacent water molecule එක hydrogen atom එකක් එක්ක මෙයා bond එකක් හදා ගන්නවා. ඒ හදාගන්න bond එක අපි මොකද්ද කියන්නේ? It is called hydrogen bond. So like that, how many hydrogen bonds, right, that can form by a one water molecule? එක water molecule එක hydrogen bonds කීයක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්ද? කීයක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්ද? I mean like one water molecule can form 4 hydrogen bonds with 4 water molecules, ne? Like this. Right? One water molecule can form 4 hydrogen bonds with 4 water molecules. හරිද? All the properties of water arise due to these hydrogen bonds, right? Yes. So what is the definition of hydrogen bond? Now we learn water. It is a very small polar and angular molecule. The polarity arises due to the electronegative difference between oxygen atom and the hydrogen atom. Since oxygen is more electronegative than hydrogen, all the electrons of that OH bond push towards the oxygen atom. As a result, it gets partially negative charge while hydrogen atom gets partially positive charge. Then polarity, it is the uneven charge distribution within a molecule. So since these oxygen and hydrogen atoms, they are charged, right? Since the oxygen atom is slightly negatively charged and hydrogen atom is slightly positive charged, they can perform weak attractions. Weak they can produce attractions between with other water molecules or within the same molecule. Those are called hydrogen bonds. The strength of the hydrogen bond depends on the state of water. හරිද? දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් liquid. If we compare liquid water and a cube of ice. Ice කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? Solid state of water. හරිද? ඔයාගේ ඔළුවට වතුර බාල්දියක් අතහැරින එකද රිදෙන්නේ ගොඩක්. කෙලින්ම අයිස් කැටයක් ලොකු අයිස් කැටයක් ඔළුවට දැම්මොත්. අයිස් කැටයක් උඩින් ඉඳන් ඔළුවට අතහැරියොත් ඒක රිදෙනවා. ඇයි ඒ? එතන අයිස් කැටය කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? Water is in the solid state. There are hydrogen bonds between the water molecules. Right? එහෙනම් එතන hydrogen bonds ගොඩක් strong. හැබැයි water නිකන් liquid water ගත්තොත් they also it has hydrogen bonds but water is in the liquid state. Depending on the state of water, the strength of the hydrogen bond it get vary, right? Anyway, in the resource they have given hydrogen bonds are weak attractions, right? So weak attraction between slightly polar oxygen atom and slightly polar hydrogen atom of a water molecule of adjacent water molecule are known as hydrogen bonds. හරිද? අන්න ඒවට අපි කියනවා hydrogen bonds කියලා. All the properties of water arise due to these hydrogen bonds. Okay? Right. ඔයගලන්ට පුළුවන් write down in the MCQ point, write down the subtopic chemical nature of water and copy down this diagram. Right? මේ diagram එකෙන් අපිට MCQ point කිහිපයක් explain කරනවා. Water, it is a small molecule, right? Inorganic. I make it inorganic because this do not contain any carbon. Carbon නැහැ මේකේ, right? Hydrogen and oxygen විතරයි. In the inorganic, right? Then polar, small, inorganic and polar molecule due to this electron difference. So you can copy down this diagram into your MCQ point and under that you can write down water molecule is small, polar and angular molecule. right? Let me know as soon as you finish. Finish? Right. In this one. Copy down this diagram. Under that, we'll write down the definition of hydrogen bonds. Write down the definition of hydrogen bonds. Write the word hydrogen bonds, then put a small arrow and in front of that write down weak attractions between slightly polar hydrogen atom of one water molecule and slightly polar oxygen atom of adjacent water molecule. Weak attraction between slightly polar hydrogen atom of one water molecule and slightly polar oxygen atom of adjacent water molecule are known as hydrogen bonds. Right? So hydrogen bonds, they play very important role in maintaining all the properties of water. Right. Next one, these hydrogen bonds, they are in the liquid form, they are fragile, cadena, right? They form, break, and reform with great frequencies. Then, you know water now, if we take a diet healthy human, 60% of body is composed of water. Again, 60% තියෙන්නේ මොනවද? වතුර. Right? So water, it is a vital chemical constituent of living matter. It acts as a solvent, coolant, provides a medium for life, right? There are a lot of functions. So water, it is a vital chemical constituent of living matter. Without water, no life, right? Without water, there is no existence of life on planet Earth. So the water is important due to two reasons. First one, vital chemical constituent of living matter. Vital chemical constituent of, living cell. Vital chemical constituent of living cell. Right? You know, all the reactions, metabolic reactions takes place within our cells, right? Within the cytoplasm or within the organelles, right, of the cell. So water, it is a main constituent, vital constituent, chemical constituent of living cell. Second important feature, important reason is provides a biological medium for all organisms. Provides a biological medium for all organisms. So water is important due to those two reasons. Now we are going to learn about the physical properties of water. Due to these hydrogen bonds, water, it shows different properties. It has different physical properties. First one, there are four: cohesive behavior, ability to moderate temperature, expansion upon freezing, and versatility as a solvent. So let's talk about the first property, cohesive behavior, right? Under its cohesive behavior, we have to learn about two terms, adhesion and cohesion. What is cohesion? Cohesion means the attraction between water molecules due to hydrogen bonding. Hydrogen bonds නිසා water molecules අතර තියෙන බන්ධනයට අපි කියනවා මොකක්ද? Cohesion. Then what is adhesion? Adhesion means the attraction between water molecules and the other molecules. Right? Now in this diagram, you can see it clearly. Cohesion, but water molecules දෙක අතර තියෙන bond එකට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ cohesion, attraction එකට. Right? ඊට පස්සේ මේ තියෙන other molecules, the attraction between the other molecules and the water molecule is called adhesion. Right? If you need, you can include this diagram in your MCQ point book. So then easily you can remember the definitions, right? Copy down this diagram and under these two words, you can write down the definition. Cohesion means attraction between water molecules due to hydrogen bonding. Adhesion means attraction between water molecules and other substances. Right. Next one. So due to this cohesion and adhesion, water can act as a transport material. Ne? දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් plants ගත්තොත්, right? Plants, they absorb water from the soil, right? Plant roots absorb water from the soil and transport that absorbed water to the upper parts of the plant, to the shoot system, right? So due to this cohesive and adhesive properties, water can act as a transport medium. It can transport water as well as water dissolved substances like minerals, right? Yes. Now, due to the cohesion between water molecules, water and dissolved substances such as minerals can transport to the shoot system of the plant against gravity. ගුරුත්වය කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? පහළට ඇද ගන්න එකනේ. අපි දැන් පොළවේ හිටගෙන ඉන්නේ ඇයි? දැන් හදට ගියොත් අපි පාවෙනවා. Because there is no gravity. Right? අපිව පොළවෙන් ඇදගෙන ඉන්න එකට අපි කියනවා එතන gravitational force එක කියලා. අන්න ඒකට එරෙහිව මේක මොකද කරන්නේ? වතුර ඔක්කොම ගහේ උඩට යවනවා. හරිද? This is possible because of what? Because of cohesion between water molecules. Right? between water molecules. It transport water as a continuum column. දැන් මෙතන වෙන්නේ මොකද්ද? You know, transpiration occurs in plants. හරිද? දැන් ස්ටොමාටා හරි lentils වලින් හරි වතුර transpirate වෙලා යනවා. ස්ටොමාටා වලින් යනවා එළියට. යද්දී අන්න එක මොලිකියුල් එකක් කොලෙන් එළියට ගියා. මේක continuous column එකක්. මෙහෙම ගමු අපි. හරිද? දැන් මේක ඇතුලේ තියෙනවා මේ විදිහට වතුර නිකන් හිතන්න water molecules එකකට එකක් අත් අල්ලගෙන ඉන්නේ. root එක පහළ. දැන් මේක ඇතුලේ තියෙනවා මෙන්න මේ විදිහට water molecules, water column එක. Due to transpiration, when one water molecule, right, remove from the plant or transpirate from the plant, ගහෙන් ඔන්න එක water molecule එකක් එළියට පනිනවා. පැන්න ගමන් මොකද වෙන්නේ? අර මේ water column එකනේ මේ ටික ඔක්කොම දම්වැල වගේ උඩට ඇදෙනවා. අර water molecule එකේ තැන පුරවන්න මෙතන ඉන්න water molecule එක ඉස්සරහට පනිනවා. ඔය විදිහට අර අන්තිමට මොකද වෙන්නේ? මේ පහළ තියෙන water molecule එක දැන් මේ column එක දිගට කම්බයක් වගේ තියෙන්නේ. මෙහෙන් චුට්ටක් එළියට ඇද්ද ගමන් පහළිනුත් ඇදිලා උඩට එනවා. හරිද? එතකොට පොළවේ තියෙන අර පස්සේ තියෙන වතුර ගහ ඇතුළට උරාගන්නේ අන්නේ හින්දා. උඩ ගහේ කොළ වලින් water molecule එකක් එළියට transpirate වෙලා ගියාම අර නිකන් කබයක් ඇදලා එළියට ගන්නවා වගේ අරයාගේ තැන අර water molecule එකේ තැන පුරවන්නේ එතනම හිටපු එක්කෙනා එතනට පනින ওই විදිහට shift වෙලා අන්තිමට මොකද වෙන්නේ? පස්සල තියෙන වතුර molecule එකකුත් ගහ ඇතුළට ඇද ගන්නවා. Right? So due to this cohesion and adhesion, water can act as a transport medium, and due to cohesion between water molecules, water and dissolved materials such as minerals can transport within the xylem of the plant as a continuous column against the gravity. Right? Next one. Water has a high surface tension. Before that, right. So this is the xylem wall. The attraction between the xylem wall and the water molecule is called adhesion. Right? This. Then attraction between water molecules are called is called cohesion. ඔන්න ඔය විදිහට xylem එක දිගේ වතුර උඩට transport වෙනවා against the gravity. The next property is surface tension. You know water has a high surface tension. Some small organisms like water skaters, they can walk on the surface of water. ඔය පොණ්ඩ එකේ එහෙම දැකලා ඇති පොඩි ස්ක්‍රුමී සත්තු. ඒගොල්ලෝ ඇවිදගෙන යනවා. But can we walk? No, we can't. අපිට බෑ. හරිද? අපි බර වැඩිනේ. මෙතන මොකද්ද වෙන්නේ? Can you see the top layer? Right? In the top layer, these water molecules මෙන්න මේ විදිහට මේ ඒවා attract වෙලා තියෙනවා හරහට. හරිද? හරහට attract වෙලා තියෙනවා. Due to the cohesion. හරහට attract වෙලා තිබ්බට මදි. දැන් අඩියක් තිබ්බ ගමන් පහළට attraction යන්නේ නැත්නම් මොකද වෙන්නේ? නිකන් අර රෙද්දක් එලලා වගේ ඒක පහළට මෙහෙම ඇතුළට එබෙනවනේ. ඒකින්ද මේ water molecules අර පහළ තියෙන layer එකත් එක්ක attraction එකක් තියෙනවා. Right? Cohesion. Attraction between water molecules. Right? There are attractions between the adjacent layers of the water molecule. So due to this, water has a high surface tension, right? There are cohesion forces between water molecules, right? So in an aquatic system, upper surface water molecules are attracted by the lower surface molecules. So here water acts as a thin film, right? So small organisms such as water skaters, they can walk on the surface of this aquatic system or water or a pond. හරිද? දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ අපිට මෙහෙම දුන්නොත් MCQ එකක් Small organisms, right? Small organism can walk on the water due to high surface tension of water. Is this true or false? Is that statement true or false? පොඩි සත්තුන්ට වතුර ඇවිදගෙන යන්න පුළුවන්ලු high surface tension එක හින්දා. Is it correct? Cool. Is that statement correct or not? Send your answers. No, it's not. Small animal keyword. Now, if we compare a dinosaur with a cat, then compared to the dinosaur, cat is a small animal. But therefore, that statement is incorrect. But if they give the statement like this, small organisms or small insects such as water skaters can walk on the surface of a pond due to high surface tension of water, then that statement is true. හරිද? නිකන් small animal කියලා දුන්නොත් ඒක වැරදි. එහෙනම් කැරපොත්තටත් ඇවිදගෙන යන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනනේ නේ? So that statement is incorrect. They have right. So let's write down the important MCQ points. First one, the first property is cohesive behavior. ඔයගොල්ලන් ලියන්න පුළුවන් four major properties of water. Number 1, cohesive behavior. අනිත් ටික 2 3 4 කියලා දාලා තියන්න. Then take cohesive behavior as a subtopic and under that write down first one. අපි ලිව්වනේ adhesion and cohesion කතාව ලිව්වනේ diagram එකේ ඇඳලා. නේද? Then you can copy down this diagram. මේක ඇඳ ගන්න. ඕන්න. හරිද? ඇඳලා ලියන්න පුළුවන් due to adhesion and cohesion, water can act as a transport medium. Due to adhesion and cohesion, water can act as a transport medium. Then, due to cohesion between water molecules, water and dissolved substances, such as minerals, can transport as a continuous column through the xylem against gravity. Due to cohesion, highlight that word. Due to cohesion. Then, next one. Next one. Okay. Next one. Due to adhesion between water molecules and cell wall, helps in conduction of water and dissolved substances. Then next one. Water has a high surface tension. Right? You can copy down this diagram if you need. මේ ඔක්කොම ඕනේ අවශ්‍ය layers ටිකක් දාලා අර කියන statement අර අපි අකුරෙන් දිලා ටික පින්තූරෙන් පේනවනේ එතකොට ඒක ඔළුවට යනවා වැඩි. Water has a high surface tension due to cohesion between water molecules. And copy down this diagram. Finish? Let me know. Right. Under that, you can write down water skaters can walk on on a surface of a pond. Highlight the word water skaters. Right. Next property, ability to moderate temperature. Right? Ability to moderate temperature. Right. So under this, we have to learn two properties of water: high specific heat capacity and high heat of vaporization. Right. You know, water, it can absorb or release relatively high amount of heat energy by a slight change in its temperature. මොකක්ද ඒ කිව්වේ? දැන් හිතන්න ඔගොල්ලෝ හොඳට දවල් 12ට විතර එළියට යනවා. හොඳට ඉරේලිය ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ ඇඟට වැටෙනවා. එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? රත් වෙනවා නේ? Body our body absorb heat from the sunlight. Right? හරිද? හිතන්න ඉරේලියෙන් ඉරෙන් අපි ජූල් 1000ක් විතර උරා ගත්තා. එතකොට අපේ body temperature එක කොහොමද වෙනස් වෙන්නේ? Q equal mc delta theta නේ නේද? theta. absorb කරගත්තු heat එක 1000 joules. දැන් මම කලින් කිව්වා I told you 60% of body is composed of water. හරිද? එහෙනම් හිතමු mass එකත් අපේ ඇඟ අපි හිතමු mass එක අපි ගමු 100යි කියලා ගමුකෝ මෙතන නිකන්. Sorry. What is the specific heat capacity of water? 4200. Right? Sorry, මෙතන 1. එතකොට theta වලින් අපිට temperature change එක හම්බ වෙන්නේ. Right? So when we solve this one, right, we'll get something like 0 point something. Temperature change again 0 point something. හරිද? 1 කියලා ගමු mass එක. ඒ කියන්නේ අන්න දැන් අපේ ඇඟ 1000 joules absorb කරගෙන temperature change එක කොච්චරද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ? අපේ body temperature එක 0.25 degrees Celsius වලින් තමයි වෙනස් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට ඒක එච්චර අපිට දැනෙනවද? නැහැ. නේද? එච්චර දැනෙන්නේ නැහැ. හරිද? ඒ කියන්නේ due to this water, right? Water has a high specific heat capacity of water, high specific heat capacity, right? So it can absorb relatively high amount of heat energy by a slight change in its temperature. Right? Then make a specific heat capacity එක 4200 නැතුව 420 වගේ වුණොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? ජූල් 1000ක ඉරේලියක් ඇඟට වැටලා ඇඟෙන් එච්චර heat එකක් absorb කරගත්තු ගම ලොකු temperature change එකක් ඇති වෙනවා. නේද? නේද? Right? So it's not good for the body. හරිද? So since this water it has a high specific heat capacity, it can absorb relatively high amount of heat energy by a slight change in its temperature. දැන් ඔය උරාගත්තු ටික ඊට අමතරව දැන් උරාගත්තු ටික පිට කරනවා කියලා හිතමු. දැන් ඔන්න හරි රස්නේ. රස්නේ වෙලාවට මොකද වෙන්නේ? අපේ ඇඟෙන් දාඩිය දානවානේ sweating. Sweating කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? අපේ ඇඟෙන් වතුර නේද evaporate වෙලා යන්නේ. heat එකත් අරගෙන තමයි ওই වතුර evaporate වෙලා යන්නේ. දැන් හිතන්න ඔයගලන්ට හොඳට දාඩිය දාලා ඉන්න ලාවක හුලඟක් එනවා. අර තියෙන දාඩිය ටික ඔක්කොම වේලිලා යනවා. එතකොට ඔයගලන්ට මොකද දැනෙන්නේ? ඇඟට හරි හීතලක් දැනෙනවා නේද? ඇයි අර water molecules අපේ ඇඟෙන් sweat කියන එක අපේ ඇඟෙන් අයින් වෙන්නේ කොහොමද? අපේ ඇඟේ තියෙන heat energy එක absorb කරගෙන. අර වැඩි වෙච්ච heat එක absorb කරන් තමයි අයින් වෙලා යන්නේ. කියන්නේ අපේ ඇඟෙන් අර heat එක අයින් වෙන. එතකොට තමයි අපිට අර හීතලක් වගේ දැනෙන්නේ. හරිද? right. එතකොට අයින් වෙනවා කියලා වතුර නිකන් ලීටර් ගණන් ඇඟෙන් අයින් වුණොත් is it good for our body? No. අපි dehydrate වෙනවා නේද? Water has another property called high heat of vaporization, right? It can release high amount of heat energy with the minimum loss of water. ඒ කියන්නේ වතුර චුට්ටකට පුළුවන් ලොකු heat energy එකක් absorb කරගෙන ඒ ලොකු heat energy එක අපේ ඇඟෙන් අයින් කරලා දාන්න. Right? Due to high heat of vaporization, with a minimum loss of water, an organism can release high amount of heat energy. හරිද? තේරුණාද? So it helps to cool our body. Right? දැන් එහෙම නැත්නම් මොකද වෙන්නේ? overheat වෙනවා අපි. Right? ගස්වල ගත්තොත් they do transpiration. ඒගොල්ලන්ගෙන් transpirate වෙලා යනවා. Right? So it prevents them from becoming too warm in the sunlight. තේරෙනවද මේ features දෙක? ඔගොල්ලෝ කැමති විදිහකට ඒක ලියන්න පුළුවන්. First one, high specific heat capacity. Due to high specific heat capacity, water act as a thermal buffer. මොකද්ද දැන් අපි අර chemistry වල we learn about buffering systems. නේ? මොකක් හරි buffer එකක් තියෙන එකකට අපි acid එකක් දැම්මත් base එකක් දැම්මත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? pH එක ලොකුවට වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. නේ? pH එක අර තියෙන range එක ඇතුළෙම ඉන්නවා. ඕකනේ අපි buffer එකක් කියන්නේ. මෙතනත් ඒ meaning එකම තමයි. heat එකක් absorb කරත් මේ heat එකක් absorb කරාට body temperature එක වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අර තියෙන range එක ඇතුළෙම ඉන්නවා. Right? Okay? That's why humans are endothermic. Right? Body temperature do not fluctuate according to the environmental temperature changes. Right? So due to high specific heat, water can absorb relatively high amount of heat energy by a slight change in its own temperature. So it functions as a thermal buffer in living system and aquatic bodies during temperature fluctuations on Earth. Second one, high heat of vaporization. Due to high heat of vaporization, with a minimum loss of water, an organism can release much heat energy, thus prevent organisms from overheating. Right? Yes, include those points in your MCQ point book. ඉස්සරහට යනකොට ඔය ෆීචර්ස් දෙක මාරු වෙනවා. ඔය දෙක මේක මෙහෙම උන්දද මෙහෙම උනේ මේක නැත්තම් වේපරයිසේෂන් හින්දාද නැත්තම් high specific heat capacity හින්දාද කියලා පැටලෙනවා. Let me know as soon as you finish, right? Finish? Right. Next one. දැන් අතන අර 2 කියලා දැම්මනේ අපි. 1 2 3 4 කියලා properties ටික. So you can write down the second property. Ability to moderate temperature. කලින් අර under the properties of water. Third one. Anomalous expansion of water. Expansion upon freezing. Right? You will learn this part. I think you have learned under heat lesson in physics. The anomalous expansion of water. Right? Normally, when we take a substance, right? What happens when we increase the temperature of a substance? It gets expanded, so the volume increases. As a result, what happened? What happened to the density? You know, density equals mass over volume. Mass is the same, but the volume increases. Ne? ප්‍රසාරණය වෙනවා. උඩ ඉන්න එක්කෙනා එකම විදිහට ඉති යට ඉන්න volume එක වෙනස් වැඩි වෙද්දි මොකද වෙන්නේ? Density, what happened to the density? Density equal mass over volume. Now, when we increase the temperature, the substance gets expanded. So the volume increases. As a result, density decreases. Right? But what happens when we decrease the temperature? The opposite of this happens. The substance gets contract. So volume gets decreased. As a result, density increase. Right? ඔක තමයි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් වෙන්නේ. හරිද? වතුර වල ඔය දේම වෙනම 4 degrees Celsius වෙනකම්. Right? 4 degrees Celsius වෙනකම් temperature එක අඩු වෙනකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? volume එක අඩු වෙලා density එක වැඩි වෙනවා. හරිද? 4 වලදී තමයි 4 degrees Celsius. At 4 degrees Celsius, water has its highest density. If temperature decreased further from 0 to 4, what happened? Right? The density decreases. Density එක decrease වෙනවා. 0 ඉඳන් මේ 4 වලින් නම් 0 වලට තව temperature එක අඩු වෙද්දි මොකද වෙන්නේ? Density එක decrease වෙනවා. So you know 0 degrees Celsius is the freezing point of water. Right? So at 0 degrees Celsius, liquid water turns to ice. So due to that reason, ice, the density of ice is lower than liquid water. Right? That's why ice floats on water. නැත්තම් මොකද වෙන්නේ? දැන් ඔය ගොඩාක් හොඳට හිම වැටෙන රටවල් වල, right? When the temperature decreases, right? They have ice නේ. ඕවත් ඔය වතුරෙත් මාළු ඉන්නවනේ. ආර්ටික් ඇන්ටාර්ටික් ගත්තොත්. එහෙනම් අයිස් කුට්ටියක් හැදුනම උන්ට ඉතින් වතුර ජීවත් වෙන තැනක් නැහැනේ. උන් මැරෙන්න එපා. එහෙම මැරෙන්නේ නැහැ. යට වතුර තියෙනවා, උඩ අයිස් තට්ටුව තියෙනවා. Right? Okay? So this expansion of due to this expansion of freezing, due to this anomalous expansion of water, it provides a living area or a habitat for the aquatic organisms that live in, especially in polar regions, right? So they can survive during winter season. Okay? හරිද? ඒක තේරුණාද? ඔක heat වල ඔයගොල්ලෝ ඉගෙන ගන්නවා physics වල. This diagram shows that when the temperature decreases, what happens? Volume increase. When the temperature decreases, volume decreases. As a result, density increases. But in water, right, this happens only up to 4 degrees Celsius. When in the 4 degrees Celsius, at 4 degrees Celsius, water has the highest density. When the temperature decreases further, right, the density decreases. Density decreases. As a result, ice floats on water, right? So, aquatic organisms that live in polar regions can survive during the winter because of this reason. හරිද? Right. You can include that in your MCQ point book. This is an important feature of water. Let me know as soon as you finish. Please raise your hand or do something. Then I can move to next one. Finish. Okay. Next one. Next property. Versatility as a solvent. Right? You know, water can act as a solvent. We can dissolve various substances in water. Harida? Before that, there's another point. Then අපිට මෙහෙම දුන්නොත් the density of all the substances increases as we decrease temperature. Right? When the temperature decreases, density of all the substances increases. Is that correct? When the temperature decreases, the density of all the substances increases. No. Why, Ishini? Why no? Others? Oh. Others? Yes or no? No. That statement is incorrect. All the substances කියලා ගන්න බෑ. Right? Because you know water, එයා වෙනම විකාරයක් කරනවනේ නේ. Anomalous expansion කියලා කතාවක්. හරිද? අපි collectively ගත්තොත් ඒක වැරදි because of water. But they have given like the statement like this. the density of most of the substances increases when the temperature decreases. අන්න එතකොට නම් මේක හරි. හරි නේද? Right. Next property, versatility as a solvent. Water act as a solvent, right? You know, even at home, you dissolve various things in water. Ne? Maybe for your maybe like to make, let's make, if you want to make a fruit juice, you dissolve different things in water, right? Even during cooking, we dissolve various things in water. Ne? Then for decorating purposes, right? For various things, we dissolve substances, various substances in water. Because why? Water is a good solvent. Now this ability is given to water because of which property? Because what is the reason? මෙහෙම good solvent එකක් විදියට act කරන්න පුළුවන් මොකක් නිසාද? Because water, it is polar. Because of the polarity of water, it can act as a solvent. Right? Polarity එක නිසා. Polar molecules like glucose, right? Then ionic compounds, sodium chloride. Then both polar and ionic like lysozymes, they can dissolve in water. හරිද? හැබැයි ඔය non polar kerosene, coconut oil ඒවා වතුරේ දියනවද? ඒවා දිය වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒවා layers වලට වෙන් වෙනවා. හරිද? දැන් අපි ලුණු ටිකක් වතුරේ දිය කරොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? Sodium chloride. You know, it is an ionic compound. So once we add it to water, that sodium crystals, so sodium chloride, they get separated into sodium plus and chloride minus ion, chloride ions, Cl minus and sodium Na plus ions, right? Then water molecules go and surround these ions. මේ ions ටික surround කරගන්නවා, වට කරගන්නවා. And they form hydrogen bonds with these ions. ගිහිල්ලා hydrogen bonds හදාගන්නවා. ඔන්න අපි කියනවා වතුරේ ලුණු දිය වුණා කියලා. ලුණු දිය වෙනවා කියන්නේ ඔන්න ඕක. Sodium chloride crystals, when we add sodium chloride crystals to water, they separate into ions. Then those ions, then water molecules go and make hydrogen bonds with those ions. Okay? හරිද? So versatility as a solvent, this ability is given to water due to its polarity. Polar molecules, ionic compounds, both polar and ionic like lysozymes, they can dissolve in water. Right? Water molecules, they surround these solutes and form hydrogen bonds. Right? Therefore, this solubility of solutes depend on what? Depend on the polarity, not on their ionic nature. Right? You can include those points in your MCQ point book quickly. Okay. Now, please take that essay book. Essay book එක අරගන්න. ඒකේ ලියාගන්න essay question එකක්. Essay question. Explain how physical and chemical properties of water important for life. Explain how physical and chemical properties of water important for life. So now I have discussed all the points under that topic, right? At home, what you have to do is go through the note given in the resource book, then go through whatever the things we wrote in MCQ point book, right? Then you can make a essay, answer, sample answer. Here you have to write down all those notes in point form. Point form again, note. Normally in the exam, when we come to essay, you have to write the answer in paragraph form. But දැන් අපි මෙතන පාඩම් කරන එකනේ කරන්නේ. When that answer is in point form, it is very easy for us to study. So write down the answer in point form. It is a homework. Explain how physical and chemical properties of water important for life. Explain how physical and chemical properties of water important for life. හරිද මේක exam එකේ එන්න පුළුවන් because we didn't get any a question like this. හරිද A level වල තාම මෙහෙම ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඇවිත් නැහැ මේ ටිකේ new syllabus පටන් ගත්තන් පස්සේ. Right? මේක target essay එකක් විදිහට දාලා තියාගන්න. Explain how physical and chemical properties of water important for life. තරුවක් හරි මොකක් හරි දාලා රෙක ස්පෙෂල් කියලා දාලා තියාගන්න. Okay? Shall we move to next topic? Right. Chemical nature and function of main organic compounds of organisms. Organic compounds, right? So under this, we have to learn about carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. Organic means they contain carbon. Right, I have a question. What is the most abundant compound on Earth? What is the most abundant compound on Earth? Yes. Most abundant compound on Earth. Very good. Water. Right? MCQ point book එක ලියන්න. Most abundant compound. එහෙම නැත්නම් inorganic compound. ඔය දෙකටම උත්තරේ මොකක්ද? Water. Right? Water. Then next one. What is the most abundant organic compound on Earth? Organic compound on Earth. What is the most abundant organic compound? Others? Oh, අනිත් කට්ටිය. The answer is cellulose. Compound එක අහන්නේ. Cellulose. Group of compound? Then the answer is carbohydrate. Right? Points to 9. Include those 3 points in your MCQ point book. The most abundant compound or inorganic compound on Earth is water. The most abundant organic compound on Earth is cellulose. The most abundant organic compound group is carbohydrate. හරිද? Right. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrate is the most abundant group of compounds, organic compounds on earth. හරිද? Highlight the word group of organic compounds. දැන් අකලින් ලියුවනේ group of organic compound group කියන එක highlight කරන්න. So what is the elemental composition? Organic නම් it should contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. This is the major elemental composition. Major. එහෙනම් minority එකකුත් තියෙනවද? minor එක. nitrogen උත් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. හරි? අනිවාර්යෙන් carbon, hydrogen, oxygen තියෙනවා. Right? nitrogen උත් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපි ගත්තොත් මොනවාද? peptidoglycan. Right? peptidoglycan. Then chitin. ඔය වගේ carbohydrates ගත්තාම they contain nitrogen. Right? Chitin, peptidoglycan, they are carbohydrates which contain nitrogen. But in the exam, if they ask what is the major elemental composition of carbohydrate, we have to write only carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. හරිද? හැබැයි මෙහෙම statement එකක් දුන්නොත් there are some carbohydrates, right, contain nitrogen, or in some carbohydrates the elemental composition is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. Is it correct? Yes. Some like chitin, peptidoglycan, they contain nitrogen also. හරිද? Right. Now, so the major elemental composition, carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Then here the proportion between hydrogen and oxygen. It is very important, right? The chemical composition between hydrogen and oxygen in these hydrates of carbon is 2:1 as in water. Then වතුරේ ගත්තොත් කොහොමද? 2 hydrogen molecules are bonded to 1 water molecule. So the chemical composition between hydrogen and oxygen, the ratio is 2:1. The same, here also the same. දැන් මම කිව්වා carbon, hydrogen, oxygen තියෙනවා. Hydrogen to oxygen ratio එක 2:1. Right? Then general formula is CxH2O. CX lu H2O. Right? CxH2O. This is the general chemical formula. Then, based on the number of carbon atoms, before that, there are 3 major groups. හරිද? දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ medicine වගේ ඉගෙන biochemistry වගේ ඉගෙන ගන්න යනවා නම් there's another group called oligosaccharide. හැබැයි අපි මෙතන ඉගෙන ගන්නේ 3 groups only. Monosaccharides, disaccharides and polysaccharides. Monosaccharide, disaccharides and polysaccharide. Right? Carbohydrates, we can divide into 2 groups as sugars and polysaccharide. Sugars කිව්වහම both monosaccharides and disaccharides commonly known as sugars. Right? There are 3 groups: monosaccharide, disaccharides and polysaccharide. Right? Depending on the number of monomers here. Also, carbohydrates include sugars and polysaccharides. Right? Both monosaccharides and disaccharides collectively known as sugars. Right? So we'll now first please include those points in your MCQ point book. First one, Major elemental composition is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Carbohydrate, first point, major elemental composition, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Then next point, in some carbohydrates contain nitrogen also. Example, chitin, peptidoglycan. Then H:2O ratio is 2:1 as in water. Next point. General formula is CxH2OY. Then there are three major groups: monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Carbohydrates include sugars and polysaccharides. Sugars, here now both monosaccharides and disaccharides are sugars. Okay, finish. හරිද ඉවරයිද? Right. Next one. Right. Now we are going to learn about the first group, monosaccharide. Monosaccharide, it is the simplest form of carbohydrate. හරිද? දැන් අපි අතන කිව්වා the general molecular formula is CxH2OY. ඒක carbohydrates වල. When we come to monosaccharide, general molecular formula is CH2ON. Right? CH2ON. Right? Here N varies from 3 to 7. N මෙතන 3 වුණොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? Carbon 3යි, hydrogen 6යි, oxygen 3යි. Based on the number of carbon atoms, these monosaccharide groups, they have different names. If there are 3 carbon atoms, that group is called triose. If there are 4, tetrose. If there are 5, pentose. 6, hectose. 7, not given in the resource book anyway, heptoses. හරිද? ඊළඟට properties of monosaccharides. පළවෙනි එක මොකද්ද? මේවා sugars කියලා අපි කිව්වා. සීනි. එහෙනම් සීනි මොනවද? පැණි රහද? මොන රහද? ලුණු රහද එන්නේ? සීනි කෑවහම ඇඹුල් රහද එන්නේ ඔයගලන්ට? නෑ. Sweet in taste නේ. පැණි රසයි. සීනි ඊළඟට වතුරේ දිය වෙනවද? ඔව් වතුරේ දිය වෙනවනේ නේ. තේ හදන්නේ නැත්තම් සීනි වෙනම තේ වෙනම තියෙන්නේ නැහැ. Soluble in water. ඊළඟට කොහොමද තියෙන්නේ ඕක? නිකන් පොල් තෙල් වගේ liquid එකක් විදිහට තියෙන්නේ නැහැ. කොහොමද? Crystalline form. So there are 3 properties: soluble in water, sweet in taste, and crystalline form. These are reducing sugars. Reducing sugars. 3 carbon triose. Right? Example එක තමයි glyceraldehyde. අර අපි photosynthesis වලට එහෙම ගියාම අපි ඉගෙන ගන්නවා phosphoglyceraldehyde එහෙම ඉගෙන ගන්නෙ. Right? It is a derivative of triose. Next one. 4 carbon tetros. Tetros example එක තමයි erythros. This erythros is rare in nature, found in bacteria. Bacteria වගේ තියෙනවා erythros. Right? ඒක ලියන්න ගන්න. Rare in nature, found in bacteria. Right? Next one. Pentoses. ඒක නම් අහලා ඇති. Ribose, deoxyribose, ribulose, right? එතකොට ribose කොහෙද තිබ්බේ? ribose RNA වල තියෙනවා ribose. deoxyribose තිබ්බේ DNA වලනේ. ribulose RUBP ribulose bisphosphate. It is a derivative of ribulose. Next group 6 carbon. Carbon 6ක්. ඒ කියන්නේ N සමානයි 6. ඒවට අපි කියනවා hexoses. Glucose, fructose, galactose ඔය ඔක්කොම මොනවද? Hexoses. Now in this figure you can see this is the ring form of monosaccharide. Right? Ring form එක තමයි ඔය තියෙන්නේ. හරිද? In aqueous media monosaccharides exist in ring form. Right? This is more stable. හරිද? ring form එක. එහෙම නැත්නම් linear form එකකුත් තියෙනවා. හරිද? ඊළඟට දැන් ওই කාබන් ගාන අණු ඔහොම බෙදුවා. ඊට පස්සේ ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ කාබනයිල් group එක අණුව. Right? Based on the type of the carbonyl group, we can divide as aldose and ketose. බලන්න carbonyl group එක මෙතන aldose එකේ මොකද තියෙන්නේ? aldehyde group එකක් CHO. ketose වල මොකක්ද ඒක? ketone එකක් COO. Right? So aldose and දැන් අපි මෙතන aldo group එකක් තියෙනවා මෙතන keto group එකක් තියෙනවා. මේවා sugars නේ සීනි නේ. හින්දා මේක aldose කියනවා අනිත් එක ketose කියලා කියනවා. Okay? Right. Aldose and ketose. Next one. Before that, you can include the things that we discuss under monosaccharides in your MCQ point book. Right. Quickly do that. First one. Monosaccharides are the simplest form of carbohydrates. They have, next point, general molecular formula CH2O brackets N, right? N varies from 3 to 7, or carbon, the number of carbon atoms varies from 3 to 7. Then all monosaccharides, they are sugars, reducing sugars, sweet in taste, water soluble, crystalline form. If there are 3 carbon, ඒගොල්ලන්ට කිව්වා triose. Example glyceraldehyde. 4 carbon tetros. Example erythros, rare in nature but found in bacteria. 5 carbon pentoses, ribose, deoxyribose, ribulose. 6 carbon hexoses, glucose, fructose, galactose. Then according to the carbonyl group, there are 2 groups, aldose and ketose, right? Aldose example glucose, galactose. ඒගොල්ලන්ට තියෙන්නේ මොකද? glyceraldehyde. ඒගොල්ලන්ට තියෙන්නේ aldehyde group එකක්. එතකොට ඒගොල්ලෝ aldoses. keto group එකක් තියෙනවා fructose, ribulose එහෙම. Right? They are ketoses. ඊළඟට you can write down in aqueous media some monosaccharides exist in ring form. Right? You don't have to remember these chemical structures. පාඩම් කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. Finish. Right. Next one, disaccharides. Disaccharide. Di කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? 2 කියන එකනේ. monosaccharides දෙකක් එකතු වෙලා, right? Disaccharide එකක් හැදෙනවා, right? So disaccharide contain 2 monosaccharide units. හරිද? So sugars formed by joining two monosaccharides by a glycosidic bond is called disaccharide. Disaccharide also considered as sugars, right? So they are water soluble, sweet in taste, crystalline in structure, right? Some are reducing sugars. Some are reducing sugars. මොකද්ද මේ glycosidic bond එක? Glycosidic bond එක කිව්වේ මොකද්ද? Right, මේ බලන්න. There are two monosaccharides. හරිද? මේ එක monosaccharide එකක් මේ තියෙන එකක තියෙන කාබන් එකේ අර එතන කාබන් එකක් තියෙන මේ කොනේ. හරිද? එතනට හයිඩ්‍රජන් එකකුයි OH group එකකුයි බොන්ඩ් වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ තියෙන අනිත් එක. හරිද? එක ළඟ ඉන්න monosaccharide දෙකක එක monosaccharide එකකින් H එකකුයි, ඒ කියන්නේ හයිඩ්‍රජන් ඇටම් එකකුයි අනිත් monosaccharide එකකින් OH group එකකුයි ගලවගෙන ඒ දෙන්න H2O molecule එකක් හදාගෙන අපි යම් කියලා ගැලවිලා යනවා. right? මේ monosaccharide දෙකට දැන් කරගන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. ඇයි ඒ? දැන් water molecule එකක් H2O molecule එකක් අයින් වෙලා ගිහින් එක්කෙනෙක්ගෙන් hydrogen අයින් වෙලා ගියා. තව එක්කෙනෙක්ගෙන් OH අයින් වෙලා ගියා. නිකන් අතකුයි කකුලකුයි නැති වුණා වගේ. ඒ දෙන්නානේ අපි දෙන්න මොකක් අපි දෙන්න දුක බෙදාගමු කියලා හරි මොකක් හරි කියලා. මොකද කරන්නේ? මෙතන තියෙන ඔක්සිජන් එකත් මැදට දාලා මේ දෙන නිකන් අත්තල්ලන් ඉන්නවා වගේ දෙන බොන්ඩ් එකක් හදාගන්න. හරි? ඔන්න ඔය බොන්ඩ් එකට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ glycosidic bond කියලා. It is a covalent bond formed between carbon atoms of two adjacent monosaccharides of disaccharides or polysaccharide as a result of a dehydration or condensation reaction. Dehydration or condensation කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? water molecule එකක් අයින් වෙනවා කියන එක. So glycosidic bond is formed by removal of a water molecule from two adjacent monosaccharides by a condensation reaction. Here water molecule is formed from hydrogen group of one monosaccharide molecule and OH group of adjacent water molecule. හරිද? එහෙනම් what is the specific type of bond that present in disaccharide? Or in disaccharides, two sugars are joined by which type of bond? By a glycosidic bond. Then මෙහෙම දුන්නා. There are no bonds present in monosaccharides. Correct or incorrect? There are no bonds present in monosaccharides. There are no any bonds present in monosaccharides. Incorrect. නේද? කොහෙද correct වෙන්නේ? Incorrect. bonds දැන් මේ monosaccharide බලන්නකො ring structure එක ගන්න. ඒව අතරේ මේ covalent bonds තියෙනවා. carbon hydrogen අතර ඒ bonds තියෙනවා. නැත්තේ මොනවද? glycosidic bond තමයි නැත්තේ. There are no bonds in there are no bonds in monosaccharide කියලා දුන්නොත් ඒක වැරදි. monosaccharide එකක bonds තියෙනවා. හරිද? එතන glycosidic bonds නම් නැහැ. ඒක මතක තියාගන්න. Right? Another MCQ point. Right. Then disaccharides. Glucose plus glucose form maltose. Then glucose plus fructose for sucrose. Glucose plus galactose for lactose. හරිද? So you know sucrose, it is the main transport material in the phloem tissue. නේ? phloem tissue. phloem sap එකේ වැඩිපුරම තියෙන්නේ මොනවද? Sucrose. It is the most abundant disaccharide in nature. Okay? Why sucrose is more suitable as a transport medium? Maltose transport කරන්න දෙපානේ. There are two reasons. කෙලිම glucose transport කරන්න පුළුවන්. This sucrose is metabolically inactive. Then it is readily soluble in nature. Right? That's why sucrose is more suitable for transport. හරිද? The next point is maltose and lactose are reducing sugars, but sucrose is a non-reducing sugar because why? එතන මොකද තියෙන්නේ? glucose එකකුයි fructose එකකුයි. glucose කියන්නේ aldose එකක්, fructose කියන්නේ ketose එකක්. ඒ ketose එක එතන තියෙන්නේ ඒ හින්දා තමයි ඒක non-reducing sugar එකක් වෙන්නේ sucrose. Right? Please include those points in your MCQ point book quickly. Finish? Right. Next one, polysaccharides. Polysaccharides. polysaccharides, poly means ගොඩක් කියන එකනේ. poly කියන්නේ ගොඩක්. Right? Polysaccharides, they are macromolecules. Right? Polysaccharides, macromolecule එකක්. Yes, macromolecule එකක් කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? they molecule එකක් macromolecule එකක් විදිහට අපි consider කරනවා නම් there are two features. Its molecular mass should ranging from 10 to the power 4 to 10 to the power 10 Daltons. Next one, they are polymers made up of large number of repeating units called monomers. Right? So these polysaccharides, they are macromolecules and biopolymers made up of large number of monomers. Right? They are made up of few hundred to few thousand monosaccharide subunit. Right? මේ monosaccharides ඔක්කොම subunits කොහොමද join වෙලා ඉන්නේ? They are joined by glycosidic bonds. Right? So these polysaccharides, they are non-crystalline. Right? Not sweet in taste. Not soluble in water and not considered as sugars. Okay? Then we can classify these polysaccharides based on their function as storage polysaccharides and structural polysaccharide. Storage කියන්නේ ඒගොල්ලෝ store, food store කරනවා. Right? Starch. Starch ගත්තම it is the storage sugar in plants. නේද? දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ මඤ්ඤෝ කාලා කියලා කන්නේ මොනවද? Starch. Right? ගහක ගෙඩියක් කියලා කන්නේ මොනවද? Starch. Right? Then glycogen, it is again made up of glucose. It is a polysaccharide. It is the stored, it is the carbohydrate stored in animals and fungi. Glycogen. Right? Cellulose. ඊට පස්සේ cellulose නෙමෙයි, inulin. Inulin ගත්තාම it is stored in Dahlia tubers. Right? Stored carbohydrate in Dahlia tubers. The next group is structural polysaccharide. They involve in making the structure. හරිද? නිකන් අර සිමෙන්ති වගේ, right? සිමෙන්ති ගඩොල් වගේ මොකක් හරි structure එකක් හදන්න යන්නේ. Cellulose, then hemicellulose, pectin, they are considered as structural polysaccharides, right? They contribute to the structure of the living organism. Then there's another way of classifying carbohydrates based on polysaccharides, based on their architecture. Linear and branched. සමහර ඒවා නිකන් අර කබේ වගේ දිගට තියෙනවා linear. සමහර ඒවා අතු බෙදිලා ගිහිලා. දැන් බලන්න මෙතන glycogen. Look at the diagram. Glycogen. You can see it is a branched one. මේ බෙදිලා ගිහින් තියෙන්නේ. So this is a branched polysaccharide. But the cellulose, it is a linear polysaccharide, not branched. Right? When we come to starch, there is a speciality. Starch, there are two types. Amylose and amylopectin. Both are storage polysaccharide. Here, amylose, it has a linear structure, while amylopectin is branched. Okay? Branched. Now, in the resource book, they have given a table for you to study. Right? They have given the monomer and the function. එතකොට starch ගත්තම there are two types, amylose and amylopectin. Both are storage polysaccharide. The monomer is glucose. Amylose is a linear polymer, while amylopectin is a branched polymer. Then glycogen, it is again a storage polysaccharide. Monomer is glucose, but it is a branched polysaccharide. Cellulose, again the monomer is glucose, right? It is a structural polysaccharide and linear, right? Linear. Inulin, monomer is fructose. It is a linear storage polysaccharide stored in tubers of Dahlia. Pectin, monomer is galacturonic acid. It is a structural polysaccharide, component of middle lamella of plant cell wall. Right? And it is branched. Hemicellulose, it is a heteropolysaccharide. Monomer, එක දැන් ස්ටාර්ච් ගත්තොත් ග්ලූකෝස් විතරනේ මොනම එක. මෙතන pentoses කිහිපයක් තියෙනවා. Right? This is again branched and structural polysaccharide found in plant cell wall. Chitin, it is a nitrogen containing polysaccharide. ඒ කියන්නේ OH- group එකක් වෙනුවට nitrogen group එකක් තියෙනවා. Right? Chitin is a structural polysaccharide. Monomer is glucosamine. It is a component of fungal cell wall and exoskeleton of arthropods. Okay? So that is about the polysaccharides. Harida, yes. Can you please include those points in your MCQ point book quickly? Finish? Okay. Then take the essay book, right? Leave some space to write the answer for the first one. ඒකට උත්තර ලියන්න පිටු දෙකක් විතර තියන්න, පැති දෙකක්. Then write down the second one. This is a past paper question, right? 2010 A-level question. Write down, giving suitable examples, write an account of the basic chemical features and biological functions of carbohydrates. Giving suitable examples, write an account of the basic chemical features and biological functions of carbohydrates. Okay, let's write down the answer. Right? We'll build up an answer, sample answer according to our new syllabus. Harida, you have to write down the answer in point form. Put number 1 to පහලට දාගෙන ලියන්න. හරි? First one. First point, elemental composition is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Major elemental composition is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Okay. Second point, general formula is CxH2OY. CxH2OY. Next point, hydrates of carbon contain the same proportion of H:O, which is 2:1 as in water. Fourth one, there are three number there are three major groups of carbohydrates. There are three major groups of carbohydrates. Fourth one, monosaccharides. Next one, disaccharides. Next one, polysaccharides. Next point, monosaccharides are the simplest form of carbohydrates. Monosaccharides are the simplest form of carbohydrates. Next point, having general molecular formula CH2ON. Having general molecular formula CH2ON. Okay. Next point. All monosaccharides are reducing sugars. All monosaccharides are reducing sugars. Next point. Water soluble. Water soluble. Next point. Occur in crystalline form. Occur in crystalline form. Next point. The number of carbon atoms varies from 3 to 7. Next point. Examples for monosaccharides. Examples for monosaccharide. Point. What is the number? What is the number? Point number? 13. Okay. 3 carbon triose. Triose within the brackets, write down 3 carbon. Example. Next point. Glyceraldehyde. Glyceraldehyde. Next point. 4 carbon tetrose. 4 carbon tetrose. Next point. Erythrose. Erythrose. Next point. 5-carbon pentose. 5-carbon pentose. Next point. Examples. Ribose, deoxyribose, ribulose. Next point. 6-carbon hexoses. 6-carbon hexoses. Next point. Examples. Glucose, fructose, galactose. Next point. According to the type of carbonyl group, they are classified as aldoses. Example, glucose, galactose. Next point, ketoses. Example, fructose. Next point, in aqueous media, some monosaccharides exist in ring form. Next point, ඊළඟට අපි ලියමු. Disaccharides are sugars formed by joining two monosaccharides by a glycosidic bond. Disaccharides are sugars formed by joining two monosaccharides, right? Next point, ඊළඟ point එක by a glycosidic bond. By a glycosidic bond. Okay? ඊට ලියන්න. Next point. Glycosidic bond is formed by removal of a water molecule from two adjacent monosaccharides by a condensation reaction. Glycosidic bond is formed by removal of a water molecule from two adjacent monosaccharides by a condensation reaction. Next point. Water molecule is formed from OH group of one monosaccharide molecule and hydrogen from adjoining monosaccharide molecule. Then, ඊළඟට ලියන්න point එකක් විදිහට නෙමෙයි. Examples for disaccharides. Next point, maltose. Next, sucrose. Next, lactose. Next point, sucrose is a non-reducing sugar. Next point, maltose, lactose are reducing sugars. Sucrose is a non-reducing sugar. Maltose, lactose are reducing sugars. Next, polysaccharides are macromolecules. Right? We are in which point now? What is the point number? What is the point number? 20. Okay. Next one. Polysaccharides are macromolecules. Then next point, biopolymers. Biopolymers. Next point, made up of few hundred to a few thousand monosaccharide subunits. Made up of few hundred to a few thousand monosaccharide subunits. Next point, they are non-crystalline. They are non-crystalline. Next point, water insoluble. Next point, not considered as sugars. Not considered as sugars. Next point, based on their function, based on their function, they are categorized as, next point, storage polysaccharide. Storage polysaccharides. Examples, starch, glycogen. Next point, structural polysaccharides. Structural polysaccharides. Next point, cellulose, hemicellulose, pectin. It's not a point. Based on their architecture, they are categorized as, next point, linear polysaccharides. Examples, cellulose, amylose. Next point, branched form. Branched polysaccharides. Examples, next point, glycogen, amylopectin, hemicellulose. Then, functions. Monosaccharides, next point, act as energy source. Act as energy source. Right? Next point, glyceraldehyde is an intermediate in respiration. Glyceraldehyde is an intermediate in respiration. Next point. Ribose is a constituent of RNA. Next point. Constituent of ATP. Next point. Constituent of coenzymes. NAD, NADP, right? Next point. Deoxyribose is a constituent of DNA. Next point. Ribulose is a component of carbon dioxide acceptor in photosynthesis. RUBP. Within the brackets, you can write RUBP. Next point. Glucose is a common respiratory substrate. Another. Next point. Sucrose is a storage sugar or storage carbohydrate or stored in food. Storage sugar in sugar cane. Next point. Sucrose is the sugar or transport medium in phloem. Sucrose is the transport medium in phloem. Next point. Lactose is a storage compound in milk or storage sugar in milk. Next point. Starch stores glucose as energy source in plants and chlorophytes. Starch stores glucose as energy source in plants and chlorophytes. Next point. Glycogen stores glucose as energy source in animals and fungi. Next point. Inulin stores fructose as energy source in dahlia and tubers. Next point. Cellulose in the cell wall of plants, and cellulose is a structural polysaccharide in the cell wall of plants and chlorophytes. Pectin present in the middle lamella of plant tissues. Next point. Hemicellulose in cell wall of plants. Next point. Chitin in the cell walls of fungi and in exoskeleton of arthropods. Harida, now let me know how many points are there. In total, how many points? What? Ifla has 68, Ishini has 41. Right. You have to write down like in a book, right? Not in the resource book. After the class, take a ZR book or some papers, right? If you want to continue, if you like to continue this class, you have to do like that. Take a separate book or a paper, collect some papers, then write down the question, and you have to write down all those points in the point form. හරියට ලියන්න. ලියලා එක මේන්ටේන් කරන්න essay book එකක් විදිහට. හරිද? එහෙම ලියලා ඉවරලා මට WhatsApp හරි message එකක් දාන්න points කීයක් තියනවද කියලා. එතකොට මම marks දෙන විදිය කියන්නම්. Right? Okay. Now we'll move to next organic compound. The other two also have to do like that, right? Others also have to do. Mokshi, what about you? Right. Next one, lipids. ඊළඟට lipids ගැන තමයි ඉගෙන ගන්න යන්නේ. හරිද? Right. Lipids, they are diverse group of hydrophobic molecules. වතුරේ දිය වෙන්නේ hydrophobic. Right? Then large biological molecules, but they are not polymers or macromolecules. අපි macromolecules කිව්වේ මොනවද? ඒවා they should be made up of large number of monomers. But lipids, they are not polymers, so they are not considered as polymers or macromolecules. They are just large biological molecules, and they are hydrophobic. වතුරට බයයි. හරිද? Then consist of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Major elemental composition is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Right? But there are some lipids that contain nitrogen. Nitrogen තියනේවත් තියනවා නැතුවම නෙමෙයි. හරිද? Choline, right? Choline කියන්නේ phospholipid එකක්. ඒකට යාගේ nitrogen තියෙනවා. Then Again here, then it contains carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, but H:2O ratio is not 2:1, right? As in carbohydrates. It is not 2:1. There are comparatively large number of hydrogen than oxygen. Hydrogen ගොඩක් තියෙනවා. Right? හරි. එතකොට lipids, under lipids we have to learn about fats, then phospholipids and cholesterol, right? Cholesterol. Fats. Fats, they are made up of glycerol and fatty acid. Now look at this diagram. Okay. බලන්න මේ තියෙන්නේ මොනවද? මේ ටිකෙන් අපිට පෙන්වන්නේ glycerol molecule එක. Glycerol means it is a 3-carbon compound where each carbon bears an alcohol group. මෙබන් carbon තුනටම OH groups තුනක් තියෙනවා. Right? Glycerol එක fatty acid. Fatty acid කියන්නේ fatty acids means they are hydrocarbon chains. මේ R වලින් පෙන්නන්නේ hydrocarbon chain එක with a carboxyl group at its terminal. මෙතින් COOH එක තමයි carboxyl group. Fatty acid කියන්නේ ලොකු hydrocarbon, big hydrocarbon chain with a carboxyl group at its terminal. හරිද? එතකොට ඔන්න glycerol molecule එකක් ඇවිත් හිට ගන්නවා. හරිද? හිතන්න එයා ගාව OH group 3යි. මේ OH වලට හරිය කැමති කවුද? අර carboxyl group ටික. ඇවිල්ලා ඒගොල්ල ගාවින්ම හිට ගන්නවා. දැන් අතන තුනක් ඉන්න හින්දා තුන් දෙනෙක්ට ඉඩ තියෙනවා. හරි? fatty acids තුනකට ඉඩ තියෙනවා glycerol ගාව. තුන් දෙනෙක් ළඟට එනවා. ඇවිල්ලා මොකද කරන්නේ? අතන වගේම ටිකක් හයිය ගහනවා. shape එකේ එතනින් දෙන්නෙක් එකතු වෙලා water molecule එකක් හදාගෙන යනවා. දැන් මොකද වෙන්නේ? ඔක්සිජන් ඉතන අර glycerol ගාව ඔක්සිජන් ලා ඉතිරි වෙලා අතන නිකන් කාබන් ටික ඉතිරි වෙලා තියෙනවා. හරිද? ඊට පස්සේ ඔක්සිජන් උයි කාබන් උයි මොකද කරන්නේ? අපි දෙන්න බොන්ඩ් එකක් හදාගමු කියලා ඒ දෙන්න බොන්ඩ් එකක් හදා ගන්නවා. Right? So, by a condensation reaction between glycerol and fatty acids, they form triglyceride. The bond formed in between glycerol and fatty acid is called ester bond. ඔතන ඔය දෙක අතර හැදෙන බොන්ඩ් එකට අපි කියනවා ester bond. Right? In organic chemistry, you have learned about esterification reaction. Esterification කියලා ඉගෙන ගන්න ඔන්න ඕක. Here what you have to remember is hydrogen atom, they take to produce H2O molecule, they obtain hydrogen atom from the glycerol and OH group from that carboxylic group at the terminal of the hydrocarbon chain of fatty acid. Fatty acid ගෙන් OH එක ගන්නවා, glycerol ගෙන් hydrogen එක ගන්නවා. ඔය විදිහට water molecules තුනක් අයින් කරලා glycerol එකකුයි fatty acids උයි ester bonds තුනකින් join වෙලා triglyceride එකක් හදා ගන්නවා. තේරුණාද? triacyl glycerol කියලා කියනවා. Then, based on the nature of this hydrocarbon chain, there are two types of fats: saturated fats and unsaturated fats. Under organic chemistry, you have learned saturated means it do not contain any double bonds. Unsaturated means it contain one or more double bonds. Now, I told you there is a long hydrocarbon chain in these fatty acids. Right? Fatty acids වල hydrocarbon chain එකක් තියෙනවා. මේ බලන්න. එතකොට saturated fats, they saturated fat කියන්නේ they are made up of saturated fatty acids. That means they in their hydrocarbon chain they do not contain any double bonds. Right? Saturated fatty acids. Normally animal fats, they are saturated fats. Right? And they are solid at room temperature. Butter. හරිද? Unsaturated fat means they are made up of unsaturated fatty acids, and that means their hydrocarbon chain have one or more double bonds. So usually plant fats are unsaturated fats and they are liquid at room temperature. The next thing you have to remember is consumption. Before that, unsaturated fats they contain double bond. Based on the nature of this double bond, right? There are two types, cis and trans. cis and trans කියලා ಜಾති දෙකක් තියෙනවා. ඊළඟට consumption of excess saturated fats and trans unsaturated fats contributes to what? Contributes to atherosclerosis. It is a heart disease. Atherosclerosis. Fats ගිහිලා මොකද වෙන්නේ? ගිහිලා deposit වෙනවා blood vessels වල. blood vessels වල deposit වුණාම මොකද වෙන්නේ? අර blood යන්න තියෙන අර blood vessel එකේ මහත වැඩි. හරි? blood වලට යන්න අමාරුයි. නිකන් හිතන්න කාණුවක කුණු රැඳුනහම වැස්ස දවසක වතුර ගලාගෙන යන්න බෑ. එතකොට හරි වේගෙන් යනවා නේද එතනින්. right? වතුර චුට්ටක් යන්නේ අරහින් එනවා ප්‍රෙෂර් එක දැන් වැඩි. ඇයි ඒගොල්ලන්ට යන්න තියෙන ක්‍රොස් සෙක්ෂනල් ඒරියා එක වැඩි. ලොකු ප්‍රෙෂර් එකක් දීලා දැන් වතුර ටික පම්ප් කරන්න ඕනේ එතනින් යන්න. හරිද? the same thing happen in our body. එතකොට ඒ වගේ blood vessel එක thin වුණාම හරි? එතන narrow වුණාම මොකද වෙන්නේ? එතනින් blood ටික යවන්න heart has to keep a high pressure. Right? ලොකු pressure එකක් දෙන්න ඕනේ. Right? So it is not good for our body. It can cause heart attack even. හරිද? Atherosclerosis. Okay, write down the lipids and can you please write down all those points in that MCQ point book quickly? ඉක්මනට ලියන්න පුළුවන්ද? Finish? Okay. Next one, phospholipids. Right. You know phospholipid? I think you have learned about plasma membrane before. Right? It is the phospholipid is the uh, main component, major component of cell membrane. Right? So phospholipids now in fats they are composed of glycerol and three fatty acids. Now here in phospholipid, the difference is there is a glycerol molecule, right? Only two fatty acids are bound to this glycerol molecule via ester bonds, and the other OH group, right? අර අනිත් ස්පේස් එකට කවුද ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ? phosphate group එකක් ඇවිත් තියෙනවා. හරිද? phosphate group එකක්. So, phospholipid molecule is composed of two fatty acids, one phosphate group attached to one glycerol molecule. Okay, this phosphate group, PO4 minus, it gives negative electric charge to the phospholipid molecule, right? And there can be additional polar molecules attached to this phosphate group, right? Like choline. Choline can be nitrogen containing organic compound. Then දැන් මේක ගත්තාම පේනවනේ ඔලු ගෙඩියකුයි අඬු දෙකකුයි තියෙනවා. මේ ඔලු ගෙඩිය ගත්තාම එයා hydrophilic. වතුරට හරි කැමති. Right? It loves water. But කකුල් දෙක වතුරට කැමති නැහැ. Hydrophobic tails. Right? So the presence of both properties in the same molecule. Right? Both properties. ඔලු ගෙඩිය වතුරට කැමති නැහැ. So it is hydrophobic. But the tails, කකුල් දෙක වතුරට කැමති. Sorry. ඔලු ගෙඩිය වතුරට කැමති hydrophilic. කකුල් දෙක වතුරට කැමති නැහැ. එයා hydrophobic. හරිද? Okay? So this is called amphipathic. මේ හින්දා මේකට අපි කියනවා phospholipids වලට මොකක්ද කියන්නේ? Amphipathic කියලා කියනවා. Amphipathic molecule එක. ඊළඟට අපිට මතක තියාගන්න තියෙන්නේ එතන එච්චරයි. Then functions of lipids. Functions, before that, this is the lipid bilayer, phospholipid bilayer. මේ තියෙන lipid bilayer. ඒක අතරේ ඔයගලන්ට පේනවා මේ කහ පාට molecules. Those are the cholesterol molecules. Cholesterol molecules can be found in the cell membrane of animals, right? Not in plant cells. Here, cholesterol molecule, it helps to maintain the fluidity of the plasma membrane, right? Fluidity, right? Then functions of the lipids. First one, food reserve as energy source. Then maintain the fluidity of the plasma membrane, phospholipids and cholesterol. Then act as signaling molecules that travel throughout the body. Act as signaling molecules that travel throughout the body. Then found as a component of cell membrane. Found as a component of cell membrane. Those are the functions of phospholipids. Those are the functions of lipids. Now what you have to do is write down important points of phospholipids in the MCQ point. After that, you can copy down the functions quickly. Amphipathic. Amphipathic. Amphoteric නෙමේ. Amphipathic. Amphipathic molecule. This is the structure of the phospholipid molecule. You can see two fatty acids molecules, one glycerol molecule and the phosphate. මේ තියෙන එහා පැත්තෙන් choline එකකුත් bond වෙලා. Right. Then take the essay book, question number 3. Describe the basic chemical nature and general structure of lipids. Write an account on lipids. Write an account on lipids. Write an account on lipids. The first point. Major elemental composition is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Major elemental composition is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Next point. H:2O ratio is not 2:1. Comparatively, more hydrogen present. Next point. Diverse group of hydrophobic molecules. Diverse group of hydrophobic molecules. Next point. Large biological molecules. Large biological molecules. Next point. Not considered as polymers or macromolecules. Not considered as polymers or macromolecules. Biologically important types of lipids. Next point. Fats, phospholipids, steroids. Fats, phospholipids and steroids. Cholesterol, it is a type of steroid, okay? Under fats, fats are made up of glycerol. Fats are made up of glycerol. Next point, fatty acids. Next point, glycerol belongs to alcohol group. Glycerol belongs to alcohol group having 3 carbons where each of them bear single hydroxyl group. Next point. Fatty acids are hydrocarbon chains with a long carbon skeleton with a carboxyl group at its one terminal. Next point. Fatty acid molecules bind to each hydroxyl group of glycerol by ester bond. Next point. Resulting fat molecule is called triacyl glycerol. එහෙම නැත්නම් triglycerides. Next one. Based on the nature of the hydrocarbon chain, contributes to form the fatty acids. There are two categories. Next point. Saturated fats. Saturated fats. Next point. Made up of saturated fatty acids. Made up of saturated fatty acids. Next point. With hydrocarbon chains having no double bonds. Next point. Mostly solid at room temperature. Example, animal fat or butter. Next point. Unsaturated fats. Next point. Made up of unsaturated fatty acids. Next point. With hydrocarbon chains having one or more double bonds. Next point. Liquid at room temperature. Example, next point, plant fat or vegetable oils. Next point, hydrocarbon chains of fatty acids contributes to the hydrophobic nature of fats. Hydrocarbon chains of fatty acids contribute to the hydrophobic nature of fats. Next point, unsaturated fats are classified based on their nature of double bond. Next point, cis unsaturated fat. Next point, trans unsaturated fats. Next point, ඊළඟට phospholipids. Next point, phospholipids are major component of cell membrane. Next point, composed of two fatty acids. Next point, one glycerol molecule. Next point, one phosphate group attached to one phosphate group, right? One phosphate group. Next point, typically an additional polar molecule or small charged molecule is also linked to the phosphate group. Next point, choline. Example, choline. Next one. The phosphate group gives the negative electric charge to the phospholipid molecule. Next point. The two ends of the phospholipid show different behavior. Next point, they are known as amphipathic molecules. Next point, hydrocarbon tails are hydrophobic. Next point, phosphate group and its attachment are hydrophilic, right? And also you have to include this diagram. මෙන්න මේකත් දාගන්න. මේකට marks දෙන්න පුළුවන්. Because you have to memorize this chemical structure. Quickly.